Welcome to the stress bucket and your dog. The bucket is an analogy that we use to measure your dog's arousal level or their energy level compared to what is happening around them. Things play into the bucket all of the time, and they may be small, positive or negative things. For example, a run down the park or seeing a dog they are worried by. They're all additions to the bucket. Imagine pouring a glass of water into a bucket each time something happens. As water is added, it gets more and more full. And this relates to the dogs getting closer and closer to their threshold until eventually it overflows. And that's when we see behaviours like jumping, barking, or lunging. So there are lots of things that play into your dog's bucket on a daily basis that affect their behaviour, and it's not just big events that contribute to the filling. It can be small, like the sound of a door shutting or hearing another dog bark in the distance. Other things to take into consideration are their gut issues. They may be in pain, frustration, allergies, hormones. They all play into it. When the water fills to the top of the bucket, this is when your dog is over their threshold, and we may see over arousal or fear responses to what seems to us as relatively mild triggers. And we refer to this as your dog's arousal level. Whenever you have a struggle, such as overexcitement, barking and lunging, or your dog is unable to listen to you, their arousal level is not suited to the situation that they're in, and they're unable to make appropriate choices. Your dog's level of arousal influences how they react to things that happen in the environment and how they are able to listen and respond to you when you ask them to do something, as well as how they process those events, whether they are positive or negative, and what emotional response is triggered for them. Your dog's arousal level will influence all manner of different scenarios, including their ability to recall when other dogs or distractions are present, their vigilance to sounds and things going on in the environment, and whether they're able to greet you calmly when you come home from work, and how they react when something worrying or ambiguous happens, like seeing another dog or person. So there are 4 components to your dog's bucket, and each are unique to your dog. The first is the size of your dog's bucket and how much it can hold. The second is how big is the hole in the bucket for it to be able to empty. And thirdly is what is your dog's natural bucket level. Some dogs have a full bucket as a baseline, where others have a much emptier bucket. And lastly, what fills the bucket? Both positive or exciting and negative or frustrating and or frightening events. Each of these are individual to your dog. But the size of the bucket isn't defined by the size of your dog. Big dogs can have small buckets that don't take very much to fill, and small dogs can have much bigger buckets that can hold much more. But the good news is that we can help to make the bucket bigger through playing games that require them to still think when their arousal levels are increased. So we also need to take into account what your dog's baseline is. And some dogs have a full bucket as a baseline, where others, their baseline is much, much emptier. And if you find your dog is also on the go or alert to things and unable to settle throughout the day, then their bucket is always going to be at least half full, which means it doesn't take much for it to fill and then overflow. At the bottom of the bucket is a hole, and the hole in your at the bottom of your dog's bucket influences how quickly that bucket can empty and how quickly their arousal levels will come back down. And as in how the size of your dog's bucket influences how much it can hold, the size of the hole at the bottom influences how quickly it can empty. So if the hole in the bucket is very small, then it's going to take much longer for the bucket to empty. And in the meantime, things are still paying into it. So it doesn't really have an opportunity to empty. But if the hole is big and as things happen, they flow out of the bottom, then the bucket doesn't have an opportunity to fill and overflow, and your dog is going to be much calmer throughout. So if your dog's bucket has overflowed, it can take at least 72 hours for their arousal levels to return to normal. And that's assuming nothing else pays into that bucket in the meantime. For example, if you walk your dog in the morning and something triggered a negative or exciting reaction, and then you walk them again in the evening and they're unable to listen to you, it's highly likely their bucket hasn't had a chance to fully empty. But we can help make the hole in the bucket bigger through playing arousal up and arousal down games. So let's have a think about some of those over-aroused behaviours for a moment. These are the behaviours that mean your dog is having trouble able to regulate their arousal levels or is struggling to relax. So we've got lunging, barking, biting and mouthing, destroying things, separation anxiety, pacing, back and forth, whining, nagging, humping things, doing the zoomies, and unable to take food when out and about, counter surfing, and just generally not being able to listen. So we need to be able to help our dogs to empty their buckets, and we can do that by dealing with some factors that are in our control, like medication for pain and allergies, and you can control where and when you take your dog for a walk. But if your dog doesn't know how to relax, then we need to help them. Some dogs just don't know calmness. They just simply can't do it. Whether they're anxious, worried, overstimulated, or their bodies haven't got access to an off switch. And this isn't good for them. And the more that you can teach calmness, the more they will be able to implement it for themselves. There are 3 elements to building calmness, and it's important that we look at all of them and give you some strategies that you can put in place. And once your dog starts to learn that being calm is a good thing, then they'll start to do more of it, and they're able to self-regulate their arousal levels, which will then lead to them making good choices when it comes to behaviour. So we've got passive calming activities. And these are things that you can give your dog to do that they find relaxing. And they can be scatter feeding, having some nice meaty bones, field kongs, a snuffle mat, field tracheas, natural chews, doing scent work and sniffing, or having puzzle feeders. And then we have rest. So allowing your dog to have proper rest is really important. And many people think that dogs don't need that much sleep. But in fact, adult dogs should have between 12 to 14 hours of sleep a day. Puppies need much more and should be nearer to 18 to 20 hours a day. Finding somewhere for your dog to go to that is quiet and comfortable for them is the first thing. And that can be either a crate, pen, or even a separate room. When I think of this, I want to create a Zen zone for my dog, a place where there is not much choice for them to do except to settle and sleep. It's a bit like your bedroom, lights out, curtains closed, and nothing to do except to rest. And the final part of building calmness is an often forgotten part, and that is to reward your dog whenever you see signs of calm. As humans, we tend to expect our dogs to know how to relax and be calm when we're not interacting with them, but often they actually need to be taught this. So dogs will always do more of what they find rewarding. And if we can reward more of what it is we want them to do, then they'll do more of that. So if you want more calmness, then reward the calm you see. Whenever you see your dog is calm, just nonchalantly go to them and place a piece of food down for them to have. You don't need to make a big deal of this, but you have rewarded that moment of calmness. Your dog is likely to then do more of that because they got rewarded for it. So if something is taking place and is distracting for your dog, then you can give your dog one of the calming activities to do so that the distraction is paired with calmness. I hope you enjoyed learning about your dog's bucket and how to grow calmness. If you'd like any help with your dog, then you can contact me by telephone, email, or through my website. Happy training!